June 2011, question number June 2011, question number 3C. Question number 3C, this is what we call the transportation problem. The transportation problem. Transportation problem. So transportation problem, it's June 2011, question number 3C, quantitative analysis. So we are told there, a grain handler limited has 3 warehouses, warehouse 1, 2, and 3. The table below shows the inventories of rice in the 3 warehouses. So they have told us warehouse 1 has 260 bags, warehouse 2 has 168 bags, warehouse 3 has 172 bags. The company is required to supply 3 of its customers, customer 1, 2, and 3 with rice. The requirements of the customers are as follows. You can see the customers, like customer 1 needs 280, customer 2 needs 120, customer 3 needs 200. The data below shows the cost of transporting 1 bag of rice from the warehouses to the customers. So they've given us those costs there. So ladies and gentlemen, once I get this kind of a question which needs me to give them the minimum total transportation cost using Vogel's approximation method, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed, first of all, to come and start by giving them a general transportation structure. A general transportation structure, normally we shall have here what we call our sources. So from our sources to destinations, from our sources to what we are calling destinations. So sources, what do we have here? And our sources, ladies and gentlemen, and our sources, we have the various warehouses where we are going to store this particular what here, where we shall be storing these bags of rice. So we have 3 of them. So from this warehouse, so warehouse 1, warehouse 2, warehouse 3, what in this case here we are going to do is to get the rice from the warehouses to the destinations. And the destinations here are our various customers. So we have customer 1, customer 2, and then we have customer 3. And then, ladies and gentlemen, unlike assignment, I'm going to put this big, huge what here, these huge cells like that, my huge cells like that. And then, ladies and gentlemen, what I will do is to come right away here and put my supply on this side, vis-a-vis demand on this side. Now listen. From this question that we have, ladies and gentlemen, on our WhatsApp, we can see that warehouse 1 will be able to give us 200. So the supply from warehouse 1 represents 260 bags. Warehouse 2, ladies and gentlemen, will give us 168. How about warehouse 3? Warehouse 3, ladies and gentlemen, gives us 172 bags like that. How about the demands from our customers? The demands from our customers, ladies and gentlemen, our customers like customer 1 needs 280, customer 2 needs 120, customer 3, ladies and gentlemen, needs 200 bags. So, ladies and gentlemen, then what I'll do, if it's a question of transportation, I must come and put what we call suspended cells. Suspended cells. These suspended cells are the ones that will be containing my CIJs, the ones that will be containing my transportation cost per unit, So like now, how much does it cost us to transport 1 bag of rice from warehouse 1 to C1? How much does that cost us? Ladies and gentlemen, from warehouse 1 to C1, I hope you are able to see the transportation cost per bag given on that table. So warehouse 1, C1, this one here gives us 100. Warehouse 1, C2, this gives us 80. This gives us 120. 80, 120. From there, ladies and gentlemen, I can see the second row, 140, 80, 140. So we have 140, 80, and then 140. And then the third row, lastly, I can see the transportation costs, what we normally call the CIJs. So I can see the transportation cost. Our transportation cost here, we have 160, 160, 120, and then lastly, 140, like that. So that is the general structure of my transportation problem. I've been able to capture my transportation problem on this general structure conspicuously. I'm able to see the concept of the suspended cells, these smaller cells, which basically will be carrying my transportation costs per unit. My transportation cost per what year? Per unit. My transportation cost per unit. So I want to give you a minute. Please, you tell me when you finish drawing this general structure of our transportation problem. Just let me know once you finish putting up this general structure. So once you finish, don't forget, we have here from our sources to our destinations. From our sources to our destinations. From our sources to our destinations. So sources to destinations. Now, ladies and gentlemen, once I finish now doing this general structure, I've been able to understand really that this is my transportation model. Then now I need to go through the basic steps, where step number one will be to check for balance. Step number one, come here and check for balance. So step number one, check for balance. Step number one, you will come here and check for balance. So the question is, how do we check for balance? Pretty much easy. To check for balance, normally we go and look for the total supply. So please go there and look for total supply. Are you able to see the total supply in the question? Remember, it is supplies that we're getting from our warehouses. Our warehouses, you can see the supplies from our warehouses, like warehouse 1 is able to give us 260 plus 168 plus 172. Could you kindly give me this figure? Kindly give me this figure. Kindly give me this figure. Tell me what do we have, somebody? 260 plus 168 plus 172. Tell me what do we have, somebody? What do we have, somebody? What do we have, somebody? Please hurry up. Hurry up. Hurry up. What do we have, somebody? Please give me that figure. Please give me that figure. So Lucy tells me 600. Lucy tells me it is 600. So this is the total supply. From there, we have the total demand. So total demand, ladies and gentlemen, what do we have for total demand? Total demand, I can see the destinations there. For total demand, ladies and gentlemen, destinations, I can see my customers. I can see what my destinations are. My destination requirements are. So I can see total demand from my customers there. Customer 1 is 280. Customer number 2 is 120. Customer number 3 is 200. So then could you kindly give us this figure? Please give us that figure. Please give us that figure. Please give us that figure. Is there anybody who is able to give us this figure as a total demand? Again, Lucy is confirming that this one is giving me 600. So the two figures are the same. And if the two figures are the same, of course, we say that our table, the table is what here is balanced. The table is balanced, and therefore we are not going to introduce any dummy. So ladies and gentlemen, here we have our parameters agreeing at 600. So the total supply is 600, the total demand is 600. Now we are comfortable because we shall not be introducing any dummy. Now from there, ladies and gentlemen, we go for what we call the initial we go for the initial. We go for the initial allocation. We go for the initial allocation of units. Initial allocation of units, if you remember our last class, I told you that we have got 3 methods. But the method which is always asked by your examiner is what we call the VERM. Is what we call the VERM. VERM stands for what in full? VERM stands for the famous Vogel's approximation method. This stands for the famous Vogel's approximation what here? Method. This stands for the famous Vogel's approximation method. 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 So I would want to rub this side, delete this side, rub this side for me to be able to tell you much more about Vogel's approximation method. So can I rub this only small side? Can I rub it? Can I rub it? Are you through with writing this part? Yes, thank you very much. So I would want us to have a small title there called what here, somebody? VERM. Called VERM. VERM for who? For Vogel's approximation method. VERM for Vogel's approximation method. Approximation method. Ladies and gentlemen, this method is also known as the method of penalties, aka also known as the method of penalties, also known as the method of penalties. So then what are we required to do? We are supposed to come here and compute row and a column penalties and a column penalties and a column penalties using the best cells, and these are normally 2 cells along the row stroke column. So you go to each row and each column selecting 2 cells which happens to be what here, somebody? The very best. 2 cells that happens to be the very best. Quite interesting. I love transportation. Quite interesting. So you go to each row, to each column, selecting, ladies and gentlemen, any 2 best cells along that row, along that column. Ladies and gentlemen, I would want us to, first of all, let's focus on row, remember rows move like that, on row number 1. So for row number 1, I would want someone to come and give me the penalty for row number 1. You give me the penalty for row number 1. So how do we get the penalty for row number 1? What we're going to do is to look for the best cell along this row. Which cell happens to be the very best? Remember, these are costs. So cost will always seek to minimize cost. Cost, we always go for the lowest cost as the very best cell. So cost, we go for the lowest cost. Like now, this cell with 80 is the best cell. So remember, for us to get the penalty, we take the best cell and the second best. 2 best cells, best and the second best. So the very best here is 80, the second best is 100. So then you subtract between the 2. For row number 1, subtract between the 2. So 80 and 100. Of course, penalty can never be negative. So 80 and 100 is giving me a penalty of 20 bob. What have I done? I've simply taken the best cell minus the second best. Best minus the second best, but decided to disregard. We decided to disregard the what here, somebody? The negative. We decided to disregard the negative. Thank you. From there now we go to the second row. Second row, could you kindly give me the penalty of the second row? Who can give me the penalty of the second row? Who can give me the penalty of the second row? Could you kindly give me the penalty of the second row? Penalty of the second row, please help me. Could you kindly give me the penalty of the second row? Is there anybody who will be able to give me the penalty of the second row? Penalty of the second row. So for the second row, what do? We'll simply come and look for the very best cell. The best cell here happens to be what here? Somebody, but there are only 3 cells. So the cheapest cell here is the one with 80. Followed by, of course, in this case here, 140 is the second best cost. Right? Therefore, I should take 140 minus, or rather 80 minus 140. But the answer I get, like what Zach is telling me, I have to ignore the negative. So 60 is like that. Ladies and gentlemen, after that, we go to the third row. So third row, the very best is 120, followed by the second best, which is 140. When I subtract the two, I should be able to come up with a penalty of 20 like that. Of 20 like that. So ladies and gentlemen, let's go to column number 1. So column number 1, who is able to advise me? The very best cell here is 100, followed by the second one here, which is 100 what here? 40. So that difference gives me what somebody? That difference gives me what somebody? 140 minus, or rather 100 minus 140. So I'm able to see these. I'm able to see these. I'm able to see a penalty of 40 bob. Penalty of 40 bob. So kindly give me the penalty for the second column. Please participate. This is a sensitive area. Participate. What do you think will be the penalty of the second? Penalty of the second column. Penalty of the second column. Who can assist me? What do you think will be the value? Penalty of the second column. Penalty of the second column. Who can help me out here? Penalty of the second column. Who can help me out? Who can help me out? Yes, David tells me 40. David tells me 40. 40. Zach tells me, ladies and gentlemen, 40 as well. Ladies and gentlemen, you are wrong. Why? Because we spoke of the best minus the second best. The best minus the second best. Fortunately, the best is 80, followed by, I'll not say, when they are tying up, if there was to be a slight discrepancy between the two, perhaps if this was to be 80.001, and I would have said the best is 80 minus 80.001. Now here the best is 80, second best is what here? Remember, it's about 2 best cells along a row or a column. So in that regard, I should come and talk of what here. Somebody, thank you very much for trying, but 0 is the proper representation. How about the last one? The last one, can somebody give me the penalty here for the last one? Can somebody give me the penalty for the last one? Can somebody give me the penalty for the last one? So the last one, Maureen Abdi, thank you very much. They're able to see 120 vis-a-vis 140, giving me 20, that nicely. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, from there, I'll now want to make some very important statement. I would want to make a very important statement, and the statement is this. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we have. This is what we have, and it will be very important for us. Why is the penalty of W2 60 and not 0? W2, why is it 60 and not 0? Very good question. Now, Victor, look at this. Between the 3 cells, which one is the very best? It is 80. Followed by the second, which is what here? 140. Of course, I know 140, there is a tie. But you see, it is best minus second best. So 80 minus 140, that will give us what there, somebody? 60, yes. That will give us 60. Thank you very much. At least you've seen it. Now, from there, ladies and gentlemen, now we go to allocations. Now, for allocations, we allocate units to that row, stroke column, to that row, stroke column with the highest penalty. with the highest penalty. With the highest what here? Penalty. So in this case here, we are not fearing the bulls. We know that penalties are bad bulls. But in this case here, we shall hold them by their horns. Right on its head. So in this case here, we will attack this bull. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll always attack the worst. We will always go for the highest penalty. And then, of course, we do what here? We tease it a little bit, and then we run away. So what are we saying here? We are saying something very important. We are saying something very important, ladies and gentlemen, here, that we are targeting the highest penalty as the basis of our allocation. And the highest penalty in this particular case happens to be which one here, somebody? The highest penalty happens to be what here? 60, amongst the six. Amongst the 6 cells that we have here, 6 roots that we have here, 60 is the highest penalty. Is that okay? 60, 40, 0, 20, 20, 60, 20. So 60 is the highest penalty. And the rule tells us that always endeavor to allocate units to that row or a column with the highest penalty. So once we identify that this is our highest penalty, we shall follow this route, the whole of this route like that. It's a row. We follow the route. And of course, to run away now from this worst animal, what do we do after we have teased it, after we have come close to it? Now we hide away from it by going to the best cell along the row, going to the best cell along the row, going to the best cell along the row. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are in agreement, when I've identified this route is the best, this route here is the one that has got the highest penalty, I'll walk along this row and settle at that particular cell, which happens to be the very best, the cheapest cell, which is the middle one, the cheapest cell, which is the middle one. But now the question will be, having settled on this particular cell here, who can talk to me tonight? This cell, how many units do you think is it going to absorb? How many units should we put on it? How many units should we put on it? This cell. Because you have identified it to be what here, somebody, to be your best cell. So according to Vogel's approximation method, always attack that row, attack that column with the highest penalty, with the highest penalty. So highest penalty is 60. So 60 takes us to this row. And on this row now, we go for the cheapest cell. And the cheapest cell, you are the guys who have told me, but Mwalimu, it is 80. Because here I've got 140, 80, and 1, so it is 80. And once I discover that it is 80, that is the very best cell at the moment, so I'll endeavor to give it as many units as possible, I'll give it as many units as possible. So remember, quantities are always compare supply versus demand. And as we said in our last class, when you're comparing supply versus demand, always work with the smaller quantity, the smaller balancing figure. So then, gentlemen, if I want to fulfill this particular cell, row-wise, I have to put 168 here. I'll not put anything yet because I'm doing comparisons. So row-wise, I'll put 168. I'll not put anything there yet. Column-wise, I'll have to put 120. So between the two, always the lower balancing figure. So I'll come and put 120. Now listen. After I put that 120 there, is there any total, be it a column or a row total, that I've been able to meet by this placement? Oh yes, by putting this 120, I've been able to meet this column total 120. So once I realize that I've met this column total of 120, it means that if there is any empty cell along this particular column whose column total I've met, any empty cell here will never accept units in the future, because already the entire column has been satisfied, fully satisfied. Fully satisfied. Now, ladies and gentlemen, listen. Once I've fully satisfied a particular column, Once I've fully satisfied a particular column, now what I'm supposed to do, once I've satisfied a column like that, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm supposed to do is to come right away here and cancel this penalty. Why am I canceling this penalty? Because now it is a useless penalty. Because in the future, I will never make reference to this particular column. The column is fully satisfied. I'll never do any allocations onto this column. So it means that this penalty here will never draw my attention towards the particular column in the future. So I'm canceling this because now we are done with this particular column. Now listen, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you cancel a penalty, there is a rule for cancellation of penalty. Cancel a penalty, always remember, whenever you cancel a penalty, always recalculate new penalties. Recalculate new what here? New penalties. Whenever you cancel a penalty, you always recalculate what here, somebody? New penalties. So whenever you cancel a penalty, what do? You recalculate you recalculate new penalties for the entire table. I like this. This is like a chorus that whenever you cancel any penalty, like now we have just canceled a penalty here. Whenever we cancel any penalty, what are we mandated to do? Whenever we cancel any penalty, we must recalculate new penalties afresh. Fortunately, I love penalty calculations. Whenever I cancel a penalty, I have to recalculate penalties afresh. And when I come to looking for these penalties afresh, I know it's about two best cells. It is about best cell minus second best. So the very best cell, when I look at this very well, this column here very well, the very best cell is 100, followed by the next one, which is 140. So 100 minus 140, that will give me a penalty of 40. So here, there is no good reason for me to delete this, to write again 40 just besides it. No, I just leave it like that. The second column penalty, I'll not look for this because already the column is cancelled. Come to this other penalty, the third column, I'm looking at the very best being what here, somebody being 120. So 120 vis-a-vis 140, that gives me still 20. So I'll not recalculate this one. After that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll not change, that figure. After that, let's now target the row penalties. Remember, it's very easy. You look for the best cell. Now the best cell is no longer this 80. This one here with 80 is not eligible for taking up units. It's already blocked. So in this case here, the best is 100 vis-a-vis 120. So you take 100 minus 120, I'm still getting a penalty of 20. I can't delete that to just write another 20. No. Come to this. The best one here is 140, like Victor was telling us, 140 and 140 now. Remember now, this is not available. So 140 and 140, now this one is giving me a penalty of what here? Of 0. This is giving me a penalty of 0. When I come to the next one, this third row, the very best penalty is 140. So 140 followed by what here? 160. When I get the difference there, what am I getting? I'm getting 20. So ladies and gentlemen, if that is the case, now I have a fresh air, a fresh team of what here? New penalties. So once I have, in this case here, these new penalties, I need to really look for the highest to do the next allocation. Remember, whenever it comes to allocation, we normally allocate units to that row or column with the highest, perhaps I forgot the word penalty, with the highest penalty, with the highest penalty, with the highest penalty. So then, gentlemen, if that is the case, listen, if that is the case, when I look around at my new penalties, the very highest is what here? Is 40. So remember, it is shark attack. We are attacking the one with the highest penalty. So the highest penalty is 40, but now walk along the column. So you walk along the column, if it's 40, and it's a column, walk along that column and go to the very best cell along that column. So if you're trying to follow really, can somebody tell me amongst these three cells that we have here for column number 1, which happens to corresponding to the highest penalty. Can somebody tell me which cell here is the very best between the three? Which cell is the very best? 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 I can see what Abdi is telling me. What about my other colleagues, my other students? I can see they're telling me that between the three, it's 100. Thank you very much, Maureen. It's 100. So if it is 100, thank you very much. Could you kindly then tell me how many units will it drink at the end of the day? How many units will it absorb at the end of the day? How many units do we give it here? Zach, Victor, David, don't fear getting it wrong. It's part of the game. Getting it wrong is part of the game. Getting it wrong is part of the game. Getting it wrong is part of the game. Abdi tells me 260. 260. What about in this case here, my other friends? My other friends. My other friends. Zach says 260. Thank you very much. So remember, it's all about balancing figures. To balance the row, the supply there is 260. To balance the column, it is 280 there. So you are right, between the two, the lower quantity will always prevail. So you're right. So in this case, you will come and put 260 there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember, whenever you are doing these shark attacks, you must always remember to place blocks. It's a war. So for me to be able to know which particular cells that needs to be blocked here, I need to know by placing that 260. Is there any total that we have met? Is there any total that we have met by putting the 260 there? Yes, I've met the row total. And if I met this row total of 260, it means that if there is any empty cell along the row whose total we have met, ladies and gentlemen, this particular empty cell to signify that it shall never accept units in the future, then you've got to do what here, somebody, you must block it like that. And then once I do that, I know that now this entire row that I've been able to block its empty cells here, this entire row is done. And if it's done, then we have to come and do what here? Cancel that 20. Remember the rule of cancellation of penalties. Anytime you cancel a penalty, you must always, ladies and gentlemen, anytime you cancel a penalty, you must always recalculate new penalties. You must always recalculate new penalties. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would want you to help me. I want us to calculate the new penalty for C1. The new penalty for C1. Could you kindly help me calculate that? Somebody give me the new penalty for C1. If you get this, we should be able to give you a present. So C1 penalty, is there anybody who is able to see the C1 penalty? Is there anybody who is able to see the C1 penalty? Is there anybody who is able to see the C1 penalty? C1 penalty. Somebody talk to me. Talk to me. Is there anybody? Because anytime you cancel a penalty, you must always recalculate penalties. You must always recalculate penalties. I can see what Bwana Zach is giving me there. Is there any other person who is able to see that 20 that Zach is telling me? Please, I need your moral support for me to continue. I really need your moral support for me to continue. I really need your moral support for me to continue. Could you kindly tell me what will be the penalty for C1? The penalty for C1. The penalty for C1. Remember, we are award-winning college every year, like this QA, I'm so sure. Even though some of you are thinking that you're moving very slow. But if you're doing these questions that I'm always doing, you'll overcome. You'll overcome automatically. You'll tell me. Just participate, become very active in Zoom. You'll be able to see places that you've never seen before. So what Victor is telling me is that he has seen that when it comes to column number 1, the very best cell now is 140, followed by 160. So then, ladies and gentlemen, what we have here, it's 140 minus 160, giving me 20. So I need to come and just cross that way. And then I write what somebody here, I write 20 like that. right? This one here, we finished its business long time ago. How about the penalty for this one? How about the penalty for this one? 140 and 140, that will give me what figure? 140 and 140 will give me 0. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget that we also need penalties for the row. Remember, normally we recompute penalties afresh. Row number 1, I don't need it because already it's blocked. Row number 2, I can see now I have 140 versus 140, which will give me 0 there. And then the last one, we have 140 minus 160, which gives me 20, like that. 20. So, ladies and gentlemen, if that is the case, and I hope you have been able to write like Mwalimu here, if that is the case, now we need to do a shark attack on the highest penalty. We need a shark attack on the highest penalty. Look for the highest penalty and we do allocations there. So when I'm trying to look for the highest penalty, I can see it is 20. It is 20, but I can see there are two 20s. So then if that is the case, what shall I be able to do? Ladies and gentlemen, what I need to do here is that there is a tie of the highest penalties. So it's shark attack, but I've realized in this case here that we have some highest penalties, 2 of them with 2020. So what should I do in an exam? Cry? No, I can never cry. It's not part of us. We can never cry. So, ladies and gentlemen, once we get a tie, this is how we are supposed to resolve the tie issue. To resolve the tie issue, what we shall do is to allocate. Whenever there is a tie, allocate units to the root. That is row or a column that absorbs the highest, that absorbs the highest number of units, that absorbs the highest number of units, that absorbs the highest number of units. So allocate units to the root, that is row or a column that absorbs the highest number of units. Now listen, my good students, listen. I'll start with this first root, which has got 20. So where does it take me really? This one here that has got 20, of course, I'm looking for the best cell. So the one that has got 20, the best cell along the row here, it automatically takes me there, X1. So could you kindly tell me, this X1 will translate to how many units? Somebody talk to me tonight. Somebody talk to me tonight. X1. If you're told here to put units there in X1, this cell that I've been able to code there as X1, how many units will you put there? How many units will you put there? For X1, how many units? Zach tells me 172. I'm waiting to hear from the other students. 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 For X1, where you can see X1, from the other students, how many units do you think will my X1 cell absorb? So Maureen also tells me 172, because whenever it comes to absorbing units, we really compare row-wise and column-wise. And always we work with what here, the lower balancing figure. So somebody is telling me that X1 will be able to absorb 172, which is correct. Then there is this other one here with the 20. So the one with the 20, remember there are two highest, 20. So the one with the 20, please walk along. Walk along. So when I walk along this one here with the 20, which cell will I consider to be the very best in terms of absorbing units along, in this case here, this particular column? Which cell will I work with at the moment? Because you said shark attack in this case here, the one that has got the highest. So now we are absorbing, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to column number 1, and as Abdi and Maureen have been able to see, as they have been able to see, ladies and gentlemen, this one has what here? Somebody, the lowest, the best, the one with 140. Thank you, and thank you so much. So this one is what we are calling X2. So could you kindly help me? This X2 cell will end up, ladies and gentlemen, taking up how many units? This X2 cell will end up taking how many units? Could you kindly help me? The X2 cell will end up taking how many units in total? So X2 will end up taking up how many units in total? Please help me out. Please help me out. Maureen says 168, 48 from Victor, 48 from Victor. Zach says 168. Thank you very much, but the three of you are wrong. But of course, there is an experience you'll pick. Anybody who contributes into this debate normally picks up something that is so unique. Now, if, for example, I work with what Zach and Maureen are telling me, that I put 168 here. See this. 168 plus 120 will be more than 168. If I put 168 here, what about 260 plus 1? It will be more than this. So remember, it is all about balancing figure. Balancing. So the gentleman, as Victor really tried, when you look at row-wise, so for row-wise, we have 168 minus 120. 168 minus 120, that gives me for sure 48. That gives me for sure 48. How about in this case here downwards? Remember, this is a balancing figure row-wise. How about balancing figure downwards? It will be 280 minus 260. 280 minus 260, that gives me what, somebody there? That gives me 20. And of course, for balancing figure, ladies and gentlemen, normally there is no two ways about it. For balancing figure, for my big cells, I'll always endeavor to work balancing figure, you always work with the smallest. With the smallest. So in this case, ladies and gentlemen, X2 can't take 48. X2 at the end of the day will end up taking what here? Will end up taking 20 like that. Now listen, my greatest students, listen. Once I reach there, now I need to ask myself a simple question. Once I reach here, I need to ask myself a simple question. Which is this question? Which is this question? Remember, it is a tie that you're trying to resolve. We said whenever there's a tie of highest penalties, always allocate units to the root, that is row stroke column, that absorbs the highest number of what here? Units, that absorbs the highest number of units. So between X1 and X2, of course, X1 is the higher. So first of all, I'll come and put the 172 units there. And remember that anytime you absorb units here, there is the concept of your V-hit. Now there is the concept of blocking your way. So once we put this 172, we must ask ourselves, is there any total we have been able to meet? Is there any total we have been able to meet? Oh yes, when you look at 172, ladies and gentlemen, you can see we have met this 172. So if there is any empty cell along a row or a column whose total we have met, ladies and gentlemen, then we need to come and do what you block. Like now, this is an empty cell. We need to block it to show, ladies and gentlemen, that really we are satisfied with this particular row. So meaning that we must cancel that 20. Now listen. When I cancel any penalty, I must always recalculate new penalties afresh. So I would want to recalculate here. For instance, here I've got two empties, which are available for taking up units in the future. And these two empties are 140 and 140, giving me a penalty of what here? 0. So go to the column. So column, like now, column number 1, best cell is 140. There is no second best. And remember that for us to calculate a penalty, ladies and gentlemen, we need the best cell and the second best. So when you reach a situation where you can't see the second best, when you reach that stage when you can't see the second best, ladies and gentlemen, it means automatically that now we have finished this process of looking for penalties. Because you see, like now, column 1, we only have the very best cell, which is 140. Which one now is the second cell which is eligible for taking up units? None. So now we are through with the penalty computations. Once we reach that stage, now we are supposed to talk of what here? Just balancing figures. Go to the two cells and put balancing figures. So can someone tell me how many units should I put here to balance? How many units should I put here to balance? You look at the row wise and column wise. And then you tell me, Mwalimu, for this one, for purpose of balancing, put this number of units. Put this number of units. How many units should I put here so that I can balance up everything? How many? Please help me. Please help me. Please help me. How many? How many? How many? How many? How many? How many? Now I need to balance up everything. I need to balance up everything. Now I'm in the last stage. The last stage, I'm asking myself, what do I have to put in the leftover cells for me to have the entire thing balanced? For me to have the entire thing balanced. So could you kindly help me out? Kindly talk to me. We are almost finishing now. Talk to me. There are two cells here that I would want to give me quantities for purpose of balancing, no problem. So first of all, I'll look at row-wise. So at row-wise, of course, like what Victor told me, row-wise, I can see 48. How about column-wise? I can see how many to 80 minus 20. So balancing figure 20 is lower. So I'll come and put 20 there. How about this one, somebody? Somebody give me a figure. The last one. How about this one here? Somebody please help me out. How many should I put there? How many should I put here? Please help me out. Please help me out. Please help me out. How many should I put there? How many should I put there? Problem with most of us, we are not talking. I would want to show you a way that you'll be able to pass this paper very easily. Number one, confidence is key. 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 Don't fear anybody. Don't fear anything. So in this case here, for example, column-wise, it will be, or rather row-wise, it will be 168 minus 120 minus 20. Somebody tells me 28 along the row. And of course, 200 minus 172, 28. So in this case here, we have 28 like that. And hooray! We are through with this question, hooray! But now I would want to punish you a little bit. And the way I would want to punish you, ladies and gentlemen, I would want you to do me a favor. I know chances are most of us were not able to follow this thing nicely. So I would want you to do me a favor. So what I would want you to do is basically to redraw this entire table, and then we see whether we can reproduce it ourselves using VAM. So as an exercise, I want you to have this table here. So we have W1, W2, W3, and then we have C1, C2, C3. And then of course we have the supply. We have the supply. We have the supply. We have the supply. So we have here our cells, ladies and gentlemen, we have here our cells. We have there our cells. Our cells, we have 100, 80, 120, 140, 80, 140, we have 160, we have 120, we have 140 like that, and then we have 260, we have 168, we have 172, we have 280, we have 120, we have 200, giving us 600. So now I would want you guys to take a step of faith and fill these units, these cells inside here, using Vogel's approximation method without fearing anybody. Without fearing anybody, please just try your best. Try your best, try your best, and then now you advise us whether you are able to get it right without really fearing anybody. All of us here are adults. We should not fear anybody. I have been able to do the initial allocations using what we call the Vogel's approximation method. Once I finish doing the allocations, the next step, ladies and gentlemen, here will be to come here and check for degeneracy. So check for degeneracy. Degeneracy is a very bad thing in transportation. When a problem is degenerate, it basically means that the problem doesn't have a solution. When a problem is degenerate, ladies and gentlemen, when a problem is degenerate, it means automatically that the problem doesn't have what here? Somebody doesn't have a solution, doesn't have a solution. So check for degeneracy. Then how do we check for degeneracy? Ladies and gentlemen, what we shall do is to come and look for number of filled cells. So could you kindly count for us? How many cells are filled up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number of filled cells are 5. Then we will come and compare this with rows plus columns minus 1. It's a rule. Rows plus columns minus 1. Rows plus columns minus 1. Rows plus columns minus 1. How many rows do we have? 1, 2, 3. Don't count the demand. So number of rows are 1, 2, 3. So number of rows are 3 plus number of columns, you will count them 1, 2, 3. Number of columns are 3 minus 1. So 3 plus 3, that is 6. 6 minus 1, that gives us what we call 5. Of concern to us is to come and get the difference between the two through what we shall be calling DOD. So DOD means difference. So the difference 5 minus 5, that gives us what here? Somebody, that gives us 0, which of course means what here? That the table is okay. DOD stands for what here? Department of Defense. No. DOD stands for degree of degeneracy. DOD stands for degree of what here? Degeneracy. When the degree of degeneracy is 0, it means that this is a very good problem, a problem with what here? A solution. Because any problem with whichever degree, even if it's just 1 degree of degeneracy, that becomes a very technical problem without what here? A solution. That becomes a technical problem without a solution. A problem without a solution. So always in section 4, your DOD will be equal to 0. And whenever DOD equals 0, you only need to come and tell us here in brackets, okay. Okay. So always our target is to have a DOD of 0. Remember, as I've just told you, in section 4, your DOD will always be what here? Will always be 0. Your DOD will always be 0. So you take rows plus columns minus 1. Don't forget the rows, how you're counting them. 1, 2, 3. 3 rows, 3 columns, and then minus 1. And then that automatically will be able to give us our DOD, which automatically will be what here? 0 in our case. But of course, when you come to higher levels of CPA, you'll be able to see situations where DOD, for example, is 1. When DOD is 1, we shall be adding what we shall be calling an epsilon to at least try get a solution to it. Otherwise, any problem that is degenerate, any problem that has some degree of degeneracy does not have a solution. Now, after that, ladies and gentlemen, now we go to the last step. The last step is the one of shadow prices. You compute the shadow prices of empty cells. You compute the shadow prices of empty cells. So now we are computing the shadow prices of who? Of empty cells. The shadow prices of empty cells. Shadow prices, ladies and gentlemen, are only applicable to empty cells. Shadow prices are only applicable to empty cells. They are also known as opportunity costs. What do we stand to lose for not putting units into our empty cells? What do we stand to lose? What do we stand to lose? What do we stand to lose? So, ladies and gentlemen, how do we get these shadow prices? To get shadow prices, we normally use a very important method. To get shadow prices, we use SSM. SSM for what is somebody's stepping stone method. Stepping stone method. SSM is stepping stone method. Stepping stone method. And remember, for this stepping stone method, ladies and gentlemen, is that we create loops which are rectangular or square. Rectangular or square. So we create loops which are rectangular or what here? Square or square, which can only bend. Which can only bend in a cell with units. A cell with units is what we are calling the stones. A cell with units is what we are calling the stones. So in stepping stone method, just like a soldier, how you're marching, a soldier like that. For you to be able to bend, for you to be able to, for example, say right turn, you need a firm ground for you to step on. You can't step on a hole like this. So you can only bend in a cell with units. You can only bend in a cell with units. You can only bend in a cell with units. So, ladies and gentlemen, listen, and this is a very easy thing, really. Very easy thing, really. So what are we saying, ladies and gentlemen, here? What are we saying, ladies and gentlemen, here? So we start with the first cell, which is empty. Remember, we are doing a list of empty cells. A list of empty cells. So we have in this case here like W1, W1C2. We have W1C2. We have W1C3. We have W2. W2 is, can't see an empty cell there. We have W3. W3. C1. We have W3. C2. So, ladies and gentlemen, then could you kindly look at this very keenly? When you want me to start, in this case here, creating my loop from here, so like I cannot go on the right-hand side. Because if I go on the right-hand side, remember, I'll just disappear, like if you can remember some time back, disappearing like how some Malaysian plane disappeared up to date. We don't even know where it went to, this Malaysian plane. Because of what? You can never get to bend in an empty cell. And of course, you cannot bend in a supply nor the penalty. So when you decide to go the right way, then right side way, then automatically Malaysian plane, you disappear. So if it is horizontal, ladies and gentlemen, you will be forced to come to the left. Why? Because I'm seeing this firm step that I can step on as a soldier, right? And then of course, when I step on it like a soldier, I can be able to say proudly, left turn. And then here I can see a stone. So this stone, I'll be able to go back to 120. So then here 120 now is a stone. I can go back like that. So I can see I've created my loop. I've created my loop. So if I've created my loop, remember the cell from where you begin from has to start with a positive, and these other signs must keep on doing what you're alternating. So this is positive, the next one is negative, this is positive, the next one is negative. Right? So, ladies and gentlemen, listen. How do we get the shadow price? What I'll be doing, I'll be taking the sign that I have here, and then of course I jump, shadow, I jump to the smaller, so plus 80, right? Minus, I can see minus here, minus 100. Plus, I can see plus what here, somebody, 140. Remember, you're using a sign, and these are higher value. So plus 140 minus 80. So could you kindly give me that figure, ladies and gentlemen? Kindly give me that figure, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly give me that figure, ladies and gentlemen. What do we have? Somebody give me that figure, ladies and gentlemen. What do we have, ladies and gentlemen? What do we have, ladies and gentlemen? Kindly give me that figure. So somebody, they're giving me a figure of 20. No. 28 was a very old figure. Could you kindly give me this figure? 80 minus 100 plus 140 minus 80. Somebody give me, even if you're not following, just give me the figure. I know once I send to you this video, you go over it again, you'll be okay with it permanently. Can somebody give me these figures and gentlemen? Please give me these figures and gentlemen. What do we have there? What do we have here? What do we have here? Somebody. So this one, sorry for that. This one we are saying it's 40. So from there now we go to C3. So for C3, ladies and gentlemen, what am I saying? I can't go towards the right. So if it's horizontal, I can only go to the left. So once I go to the left, of course, there is no way I can land here because this cell is an empty cell. There is no way, ladies and gentlemen, as a soldier, I can try to put my boot on this hole. For me to be able, ladies and gentlemen, to really make about turn as a soldier, I need a hard ground. I need, ladies and gentlemen, stones. So it means I have to jump this cell. So then I go to 20. From there, of course, I'll come. Of course, I can see here. But you see, when I try to bend here, Malaysian disappear. When I try to bend down, Malaysia, so this is irrelevant to me. So it means I go to 28, and then I go back. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, that my signs can only be on top of the corners. So we have plus there, we have minus, we have plus here, we have minus there. Nothing really whatsoever because there is no corner there. So if you're following, then W1C3 will be plus 120. I have to start from here. And then I can move whichever way, either clockwise or anti-clockwise. So plus 120, I can see the next sign is this minus. So minus 100 plus, I can see the next sign is this, which is plus 140. Minus, ladies and gentlemen, I can see the next sign is this, which is minus what here? Minus 140. So could you kindly give me this figure? Kindly give me this figure. Kindly give me this figure. What do we have here? What do we have here? Somebody knows, some of us may not really be following because it's the very first time you are getting to see this, but it is something you will love. It is something you will love. So can somebody give me this figure, ladies and gentlemen? I can see this canceling out. Is there anybody who is able to see 20 bob? Is there anybody who is able to see 20 bob? 20 bob? 20 bob? Yes, Maureen has confirmed. Ladies and gentlemen, we go to W3C1, this one. I would want to see whether there is anybody who will be able to make this loop for me. This loop for me, ladies and gentlemen, what do we have? This loop for me, from here, I will be able, if it's horizontal, I'll go to 172. I'll go to 28. I'll skip this 120, move there, and then I'll be able to get back. Of course, this is the plus, this is the minus, this is the plus, this is the minus. So I'll come and say here, plus 160, I'm moving anyhow, either clockwise or anti-clockwise. The next one is minus 140 plus 140 minus 20 here. So can somebody give me this answer really? Can somebody give me that answer? Second last. Can somebody give me this answer? Second last, the second last. They are called shadow prices. They are called shadow prices. They are called shadow prices. So I can see the 140 and the 140 canceling there, right? Remember, this was 160 minus 140 plus 140, not minus 20, it's supposed to be minus 140. Sorry for that. Minus 140. Minus 140. Zach, look at this. I subtracted the unit and I'm supposed to take the smaller value. Smaller value. So I can see this and this cancelling out. So the final answer will be 20. Now, as we finish, look at this W3 C2 cell. So here, of course, I'm surrounded. From here, I'll go there. I'll go like that. I'll go like that. So I start with a plus minus there, minus there. So then we have here plus 120, minus 140, plus 140, minus 80. Could you kindly give me this answer? Kindly give me this answer for W3, C2, and then I'll be able to guide you accordingly. For W3, C2, kindly give me that answer. What do we have, somebody? What do we have, somebody? So Zach is giving me 40 bob. So ladies and gentlemen, in this case here, what you are able to see is that all shadow prices are positive. All shadow prices are positive, and therefore the solution is optimal. And therefore the solution is what here is optimal, and that marks the end of that particular what here question. So in this case, ladies and gentlemen, the shadow prices are positive, means good.